Beneath the bright, carefully controlled lights of Studio 1A, Savannah Guthrie looks unshakable. Every morning, millions of Americans wake up to her steady voice, her measured questions, her composed smile. She is polished, prepared, predictable in the best way. A woman who seems to live entirely in the light. But recently, a headline began circulating online that painted a very different picture. At 84, Savannah Guthrie's mother had allegedly discovered something shocking inside her daughter's mansion. The phrasing alone was enough to ignite speculation. What could possibly be hidden inside the private world of one of America's most trusted journalists? A secret? A scandal? Something that contradicted the image carefully crafted over decades? The rumor spread fast because people love the idea that behind every public figure lies a locked door. And then Nancy Guthrie walked through that door. But what she found inside Savannah's home wasn't a secret waiting to explode. It was something far more revealing. To understand why that matters, you have to step away from the studio lights and into the quiet corners of Savannah Guthrie's real life. Her homes, whether it's the sleek Tribeca apartment in Manhattan or the sprawling white-clapboard farmhouse nestled in the Hudson Valley, are undeniably grand. High ceilings, expansive windows, carefully chosen furnishings. The kind of architecture that whispers success. But when Nancy, at 84 years old, crosses the threshold, she isn't looking at square footage. She's looking for her daughter. And what she finds is not a fortress of fame. It's evidence of a life that never forgot where it started. There are muddy boots by the door belonging to Vale and Charlie. Half-finished art projects scattered across the dining table. Stacks of books that range from political biographies to dog-eared children's stories. A kitchen that smells less like a designer showroom and more like coffee brewed too early in the morning. This isn't a museum curated for appearances. It's a working home. But the truth is, Nancy doesn't measure success by marble countertops or price tags. She measures it by continuity. Because long before Savannah was navigating interviews with presidents, she was navigating grief in the Arizona desert. Tucson wasn't glamorous. It was wide open sky and dry heat. It was dust in your shoes and sunlight so bright it felt like truth itself. Savannah grew up there in a home where debate was encouraged and curiosity was currency. Dinner conversations weren't small talk, they were discussions. Questions were welcomed. Opinions were sharpened. And then, when Savannah was just 16 years old, everything shifted. Her father, Charles, died suddenly of a heart attack. One day the structure of the family stood firm. The next it was gone. For a teenage girl already wired for intensity, the loss could have fractured her. But Nancy did something extraordinary in that moment. She didn't let grief harden into bitterness. She turned it into fuel. The bond between mother and daughter deepened not because life was easy, but because it wasn't. Nancy steadied the home. She held the emotional line. She insisted that faith and education remain non-negotiable. Savannah watched her mother stand in the wind and refuse to bend. And something in her learned to do the same. That is the part of the story no mansion headline captures. Because the discipline that now wakes Savannah at 3 a.m. was born in that desert house. The precision in her questions? Forged in a dining room where arguments had to make sense. The composure on live television? Modeled after a mother who endured devastating loss without surrendering her core. When Savannah left Arizona, she didn't leave Tucson behind. She carried it. Her early career in local news gave her the mechanics of journalism. But something inside her felt incomplete. Reporting the facts wasn't enough. She wanted to understand the machinery behind them. So she did something that startled almost everyone around her. She went to law school. Not casually. Not tentatively. She entered Georgetown University Law Center and graduated magna cum laude. Friends from that time remember a different Savannah. Less bubbly. More surgical. Long nights in the library. Margins filled with notes. Arguments dissected like living organisms. It wasn't a detour. It was an expansion. She wanted to understand power, not just report on it. For a while it seemed the law might win. She joined a prestigious firm specializing in white-collar criminal defense. Mahogany conference tables replaced newsroom chaos. But storytelling has gravity. And eventually it pulled her back. When she re-entered journalism as a legal correspondent, something clicked. She wasn't just relaying headlines anymore. She was explaining systems. Deconstructing narratives. Spotting inconsistencies others missed. The legal mind fused with the reporter's instinct. Then came the White House. If law school was intellectual training, the White House was emotional combat. The briefing room is not gentle. It is fast, political, strategic. Every word matters. Every silence is calculated. Savannah didn't chase sound bites. She pursued logic. Her questions were polite, but they landed hard. She had the rare ability to smile while cornering a contradiction. It earned her respect, and occasionally resistance. The hours were punishing. Flights before dawn. Reports filed after midnight. Constant proximity to global tension. Nancy watched from afar, proud and quietly anxious. Because Washington can inflate egos. It can distort perspective. But Savannah remained anchored. Calls home were frequent. Faith remained central. The Tucson girl never disappeared. And then, in 2011, her career shifted again. She joined Today. Morning television is a different battlefield. It demands warmth without weakness. Authority without arrogance. The ability to pivot from tragedy to light-hearted banter in under 60 seconds. Savannah adapted quickly. But in 2017, the show faced one of its darkest days. The sudden firing of Matt Lauer over allegations of misconduct shocked viewers and staff alike. It was Savannah who had to deliver the news live on air. There was no teleprompter shield strong enough for that moment. She spoke of heartbreak, of concern for the women involved, of confusion. The composure remained, but vulnerability broke through. Nancy watched that broadcast knowing her daughter wasn't just reading headlines. She was carrying institutional grief in real time. In the aftermath, something historic happened. Savannah and Hoda Kotb became the first all-female anchor team in the show's 7-decade history. It wasn't performative solidarity. It was partnership. Their bond, visible, genuine, reshaped the tone of the program. And behind the scenes, Savannah's life was changing in another profound way. Motherhood. She welcomed her daughter Vale at 42. Then her son Charlie. Becoming a mother later in life altered her emotional architecture. Stories involving children carried new weight. Interviews about family tragedy landed differently. And Nancy re-entered the daily rhythm of her daughter's life, not as supervisor but as support. In Savannah's home, Nancy isn't a visitor. She's continuity. She witnesses the bedtime prayers, the messy breakfast, the exhaustion after 3 a.m. alarms. She sees how Savannah juggles scripts and school pickups, global crises and scraped knees. And then came a real crisis that shook the family in a way no broadcast ever could. In early 2026, Nancy was reported missing from her Tucson home. For hours that felt like years, uncertainty swallowed everything. Savannah, accustomed to reporting breaking news, was suddenly living it. The composed anchor became a daughter praying in public. She asked for voices lifted in hope. She turned to Psalm 23, the darkest valley she had referenced so many times on air. This wasn't theoretical faith anymore. It was survival faith. And when the situation resolved, something shifted permanently. Because nothing clarifies love like the threat of losing it. Which brings us back to that headline. What did Nancy find in Savannah Guthrie's mansion? She found framed photos of Charles, the father who shaped their early years. She found children being raised with the same values she once instilled. She found books on faith resting beside legal briefs. She found discipline tucked into early morning routines. She found exhaustion and gratitude sharing the same kitchen space. She found that despite wealth, accolades, and proximity to power, her daughter had not traded substance for shine. The mansion wasn't hiding secrets. It was holding history. Behind the polished broadcast persona is a woman still shaped by desert wind, sharpened by law books, tested in political arenas, softened by motherhood and steadied by faith. Nancy didn't discover scandal. She discovered legacy. And maybe that's the most unexpected revelation of all. Because in a world obsessed with exposing what's wrong inside celebrity homes, the real story here is almost radical in its simplicity. The house reflects the heart. And at 84 years old, when Nancy walks through her daughter's front door, she doesn't see a star. She sees the same determined girl from Tucson. Only now the world is watching.